We interrupt this film to tell you we are getting reports that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been badly injured in a car crash in France.
That Diana, Princess of Wales, has died in this accident.
She is now officially reported as dead.
She was a woman who knew too much, and the circumstances surrounding her death couldn't be more suspect.
How is it that every single traffic camera was switched off or not working?
20 years later, and the smoke surrounding the crash that claimed the life of the Princess of Wales and 2 others has only grown thicker. A mysterious white car seen racing from the scene. A driver secretly working for MI6. Seatbelts that had been jammed. Strangely malfunctioning traffic cameras surrounding the tunnel. And a suspiciously lengthy ambulance ride. Was Diana pregnant the night of the crash? Why was her body hurriedly embalmed against all French law? Had her unpredictability finally pushed the royal family over the edge? Or could she have known something major she was about to expose to the world? The evidence of murder and cover-up lends credence to long-standing theories that Princess Diana was murdered.
They have murdered my son and Princess Diana.
Hear the predictions by Diana herself. See the evidence officials want forgotten. And decide for yourself what motives may have ultimately driven her assassins to ponder how to murder a princess. It's one of the greatest murder plots of all time, really. A corrupt royal family caught in a public feud with a tempestuous and uncontrollable princess who's adored by the public. Add in an Arab lover and a possible pregnancy, and it's the perfect recipe for murder.
I don't have time, an awful lot of time for hobbies, but keeping alive, one of them, keeping alive.
October 1995. Diana wrote a letter to her butler predicting she would die in a staged car crash set up by her husband.
She wrote this letter to her butler, Paul Burrell, telling him that the royal family were planning her death. Diana said the same thing to her lawyer, Lord Mishcon, who made a note of her prediction.
2 years later, she would be dead under the exact circumstances she had predicted. It was a hot night in Paris on August 31st, 1997, and the tense situation at the Ritz had reached a boiling point. Inside the palatial hotel, a dangerous and deadly escape plan was being formulated. Desperate to evade the growing crowd of ruthless paparazzi, who strangely seemed to know the couple's every move, the princess and her boyfriend Dodi Al-Fayed would make a daring escape out the back of the hotel. By the end of the night, the plot to murder the Princess of Wales would be complete, and the cover-up had already begun. The most glaring irregularity about the case is undoubtedly the white Fiat Uno. The mysterious vehicle sideswiped the princess and Dodi, leaving a streak of white paint on the Mercedes. It was the only other car in the tunnel that night, and neither the car nor the driver were ever officially identified.
As the Mercedes approached the Elmer Tunnel, chased by a car and at least one motorcycle, his final exit route to the right, to the Champs-Élysées, was blocked by a motorcycle which forced him to drive into the Elmer Tunnel. There was a white Fiat Uno waiting at the mouth of the Elmer Tunnel, and as the Mercedes approached, the Fiat Uno edged over the center lane, forcing the Mercedes off course. At the same time, a motorcycle pulled in front of the Mercedes, and an eyewitness has said that there was a huge flash which blinded Henri Paul. The combination of speed and the blinding light, along with the intervention of the Fiat Uno, pushed Paul off course, and the Mercedes crashed into the 13th concrete pillar in the tunnel.
Pieces of a tail light found at the scene were identified as belonging to a white Fiat Uno. But who was the driver, and why were they nowhere to be found? Officially, French authorities claimed they were never able to identify the driver. But private investigators for Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, did.
It was our investigators, not the French police, who found the Fiat Uno It was found in a garage in Paris and traced to a paparazzi named James Anderson. Anderson was an Anglophile with close connections to the British. According to Anderson, he was in Paris at the time of the crash, but for some unexplained reason decided to get up at 3:30 a.m., 2 hours after the crash, and board a flight to Corsica from Orly Airport in Paris. The French police and the magistrate accepted an alibi based on a simple gas receipt from Anderson, albeit that the paint and bumper samples from the white Fiat Uno matched those left on the Mercedes.
Anderson was a millionaire photographer who also happened to be an MI6 asset, taking on jobs for them when needed. Intelligence agencies pay well for this work.
I am personally convinced, as are many people, that Anderson was driving the Fiat Uno, his Fiat Uno, that night in the Alma Tunnel. It was he who swerved in front of the Mercedes and set in motion the situation that ended in Diana's death.
MI6 have a cadre of people who have their own profession, their own life, they do their own jobs. They can be barristers, they can be all sorts of things, who just happen to have a skill which is occasionally useful to MI6, and they kind of work on a short-term contractual basis for MI6. They had one guy who was a photographer, and his normal job was as a paparazzi photographer, but occasionally he would do work for MI6.
MI6 whistleblower Richard Tomlinson cited an incident of one such agent being paid £100,000 a year with bonuses of up to £500,000 for more difficult operations. 2 years after the crash, Anderson was found dead with multiple gunshot wounds to the back of the head. His body incinerated almost beyond recognition inside his car. His death was ruled a suicide.
On the 5th of May 2000, Philip Anderson was found burned to death in his car. The car was locked. He could only be identified from dental records. The French officials claimed that this was suicide, but it's not a suicide known to this world.
They claimed this, even though the fireman who found him says he saw 2 bullet holes in Anderson's skull. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to point out that it's difficult for a man to shoot himself twice in the head and then set fire to his own car before dying.
Anderson wasn't the only MI6 operative in the tunnel with Diana that fateful night. This is where the plot thickens. The hotel bodyguard driving Diana and Dodi was also working for British and French intelligence.
I know that Henri Paul worked for MI6, the British intelligence unit that I worked for. I saw his name in files in 1992 on an operation that I was working on, and he worked for MI6 right until his death.
Henri Paul had quite a lifestyle. An avid pilot, he had racked up a whopping 605 hours of flying time at €300 an hour. Paul had a string of bank accounts with sums totaling over 1.2 million francs, which had received several large deposits prior to the crash.
Henri Paul was in the pay of British intelligence, particularly MI6. He was in the pay of the Paris Police and Paris Special Branch. He was in the pay of the American intelligence services. And Henri Paul made a great deal of money out of it. After his death, it was discovered that Henri Paul had £140,000 in 6 bank accounts in Paris.
In order to really pull off a successful public assassination, a patsy or scapegoat is almost always required. Similar to Lee Harvey Oswald in the JFK assassination, Henri Paul was the patsy in Diana's. Having Paul in place allowed Diana's assassins to control the route taken. The shortest way to Dodi's apartment would have actually been to take the Champs-Élysées. Instead, Paul took the long way around, ensuring the princess and Dodi would meet up with Anderson in the tunnel.
Curiously, instead of taking the most direct route to Dodi's apartment from the Ritz Hotel, which was up the Champs-Élysées, it is possible that agents told Paul to drive the other route alongside the River Seine. Henri Paul knew every inch of the road from the Ritz to Dodi's apartment. he certainly would not have willingly taken the Alma Tunnel route, which would have meant going away from Doty's apartment.
Why did he go the route he took, which was not the direct route back to the apartment just off the Champs-Élysées? It is at least conceivable that he did what he did and chose the route that he did on the instructions or advice of somebody other than his principals. By that I mean Doty and Diana.
Paul could then be the perfect scapegoat. His blood alcohol level was claimed to be 3 times the French drink drive limit, the equivalent of having consumed several bourbons on an empty stomach. Behavioral analysis of Paul less than an hour before the crash, however, shows no signs of inebriation.
It's now about 20 minutes after midnight on August 31st, 1997. We see Henri Paul, Trevor Rees-Jones, Princess Diana, and Doty. Henri Paul appears from this tape to be totally sober. He appears to be able to walk with no assistance. He isn't staggering. There's no evidence that Henri Paul is drunk or under the influence of alcohol at this point. And remember, this is only a few minutes away from the fatal car accident.
French press went ahead and reported the story that Paul's blood was 3 times the legal limit, before toxicology reports had even come out.
Within just over 24 hours of this crash, when it was put out that this was caused by a drunk driver, a person drunk as a pig, driving at 192 kilometers. They were false statements. They were certainly false statements then, and we know they're false statements now. And one of the reasons we know that is that the statement as to the drink drive was put out before Henri Paul's body samples had even been fully analyzed.
No one knows for certain what happened inside that tunnel on the night of the crash. What we do know is that at approximately 12:25 a.m., the Mercedes carrying Diana and Doty collided with the 13th column, instantly killing both the driver, Henri Paul, and Doty Al-Fayed. But Princess Diana was not dead. One ambulance crew told French newspaper Diana was agitated, semi-knocked out, but conscious and groaning. The only survivor, bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, says he recalls hearing the princess calling for Doty. But why was Diana held in that tunnel for over an hour before being removed? And why did the ambulance drive at a snail's pace, passing 4 capable hospitals along the way? Because she wasn't supposed to have survived the crash, but she did. And now backup had arrived to finish the job. Although the princess had not died, there was now a credible reason for her to die. All the alleged medical team had to do now was ensure their target did not survive, by any means necessary.
At the inquest, experts agreed that her life could have been saved had it not been for the suspiciously slow and furtive actions of Dr. Martino and his crew, the other members of which have never been officially identified or interviewed.
Many theorists believe Diana was given a lethal injection of poison en route to the hospital by British intelligence posing as French paramedics. MI6 has at their disposal an arsenal of lethal drugs, many of which are undetectable unless tested for specifically. The ambulance carrying the princess stopped twice for delicate operations, one of which was within sight of the hospital.
There's also been no explanation as to why the ambulance stopped for 10 minutes when they were just 800 meters from the hospital.
It's a very, very odd thing to do. No ambulance would ever do that in this country, and I believe no ambulance anywhere in the world would ever do that, unless there was a conspiracy.
At 2:10 a.m., an inexplicable hour and 45 minutes after the crash, Diana finally arrived at the hospital, but she was already dead. Contrary to the official narrative, the autopsy report shows the princess was clinically dead at 12:45, before she ever even left the tunnel, and over an hour before her ambulance would finally arrive at the hospital. But what about all the traffic cameras around the tunnel? All cameras surrounding the tunnel that night were off at the crucial moment.
They say that starting from the Ritz, which is next to the Ministry of Defence, that the cameras outside the Ministry of Defence weren't working. None of the cameras in the Place de Concorde, the Rue de Rivoli, were working, or on this route, or at the entrance of the tunnel. All 11 cameras, for some reason, were not functioning correctly on that night.
Never before had the entire camera system malfunctioned at the same time, and no explanation has ever been given. But the traffic cameras would not be the only system to mysteriously malfunction on the night of the crash. At the same time, all emergency communication frequencies in central Paris were jammed. According to the book, Who Killed Diana by Simon Regan, a contact of his was sitting near the Eiffel Tower, listening to a police radio scanner on the night Diana died. Suddenly, at 12:20 a.m., there was a complete radio blackout. When the signal came back approximately 20 minutes later, it was total mayhem. As if everyone was trying to communicate at once, he described, adding he had never heard such chaotic radio traffic. It can be no coincidence that right as the Mercedes was leaving the Ritz, all lines suddenly went down. By the time they returned, the Princess of Wales would be moments from death. Shortly after midnight on the night of the crash, the Princess and Dodi were ushered out the back of the Ritz Hotel and into a waiting Mercedes S280. Little did they know they were entering a specially engineered 2-ton death trap. The car that would carry Diana had been tampered with, rendering both rear seatbelts inoperable.
Diana sat in the rear right seat. She habitually wore a seatbelt, but on this occasion, she did not put it on. When the car was subsequently examined by a crash expert on behalf of the Metropolitan Police, the rear right seatbelt was found to be defective. Had it been tampered with? Was this why Diana was not wearing a seatbelt that night?
Could the steering and brakes have also been compromised? Unfortunately, we will never know. French authorities turned down offers from Mercedes to inspect the wrecked car.
Mercedes were paid to carry out crash tests, although their experts were never allowed to inspect the vehicle.
But the cover-up of Diana's murder goes deeper than that. Police failed to treat the area within the tunnel as a crime scene, causing vital evidence to become lost or tainted. Shortly thereafter, street-washing trucks arrived and the tunnel was completely hosed down, thoroughly erasing any shred of evidence that may have remained.
Shortly before dawn, the Propriété de Paris, the green vehicles which sweep the streets, sprayed detergent in the tunnel. Not the best way of preserving forensic evidence.
Within hours, everything was removed, washed down, filtered as though, right, that's the end of that one. It's extraordinary that they should have got rid of any possible evidence that was there so quickly when the Princess of Wales was the person who had died.
But there was still one important piece of evidence to be dealt with: Diana herself. The Princess of Wales was hurriedly embalmed against all French law. Her body kept in a hot room for 5 hours in order to justify the illegal procedure. The embalming process made it impossible to ever determine for sure if poison may have played a role in her demise, or whether or not she was pregnant at the time of the crash, as has been widely suggested.
What did become clear was that within hours of Diana's death, her body was pumped full of embalming fluid, so no pregnancy tests were possible. And soon after, she had her reproductive organs removed under the watchful eye of the royal coroner.
How can you embalm a body and very short distance of travel?
Why do you think they embalmed her, to hide the pregnancy?
Because they had to corrupt the body because she was pregnant. She had to take all her guts.
On the night of August 31st, 1997, the Princess of Wales would die in the exact manner in which she had predicted. And all evidence points to murder. Both the Mercedes and the white Fiat Uno were driven by known MI6 operatives. All traffic cameras surrounding the tunnel simultaneously and inexplicably malfunctioned as the Princess approached the tunnel. A concerted effort to eliminate and cover up evidence surrounding the scene began immediately, But who would want to kill the beloved princess, and why? With her outspoken stance on controversial humanitarian causes, Diana won the admiration of millions, as well as a few powerful enemies.
She's conducting a major international offensive against landmines with all the crippling economic problems that would bring for the British establishment again. And the British government.
America.
And America. She'd become trouble, as she used to say to me. I'm trouble to them. I won't go away. I won't go quietly.
Diana was certain that her phones were being tapped by the British Secret Services.
Every time she'd hear a click, she used to say, "Boys, time to change the tape."
We now know that her calls were also being monitored by the American Secret Services. After years of denial, they finally admitted to having almost 1,200 pages of transcripts, although they refused to make most of them public, claiming it would threaten national security.
However, there is but one person in the world truly powerful enough to have authorized the assassination of the future Queen Mother of England. The person all intelligence officers, police, judges, and politicians swear an oath to. The Queen herself. London, August 3rd, 1997. 3 days after the death of the Princess of Wales. The growing throng of mourners surrounding Buckingham Palace are desperate for some sign of consolation. But the Queen is nowhere to be found. She's been holed up inside her foreboding Balmoral Castle in Scotland since before the news broke.
This rather kind of dangerous mood of hostility, you have to call it that, towards the royal family. They couldn't understand how the Queen could remain on holiday and not be with them mourning Diana in London.
It would be another 2 days before she would relent and return to acknowledge the princess's passing. There had long been bad blood between the princess and the royal family. Diana had leaked a series of tapes which were written into a best-selling book in which she exposed how badly she was treated by Charles and the royal family. Never before had a British monarch's private life been spoken of so openly. As a punishment, the Queen stripped Diana of her Royal Highness title, and with it, her Scotland Yard protection, leaving the future Queen Mother unprotected and vulnerable to an increasingly aggressive paparazzi.
They know how that they can bring her downside, and they are ready to do it. They would take her toys off, one by one. She lost her Royal Highness title. She lost her Scotland Yard protection. She lost a great deal of her status, and she very nearly lost the title of Princess of Wales. They were talking about her becoming Duchess of Cornwall because they felt that she had insulted the Queen.
But the unpredictable princess wasn't about to bow out quietly.
She won't go quietly, that's the problem. I'll fight till the end, because I believe that I have a role to fulfill. And I've got 2 children to bring up.
Diana had recently taken up a public romance with Playboy producer Dodi Al-Fayed, a man Prince Philip had made no secret of disliking. Diana knew she had successfully struck another royal nerve, and now rumors of an engagement and possible pregnancy threw the media frenzy into overdrive. Unfortunately, due to her speedy and illegal embalming, we can never know for certain whether or not Diana was pregnant. But if she was, it would have been devastating to the Windsors. She had grown past caring what the Queen thought of her, and had now found a man who could keep her in the style to which she had become accustomed. There was even talk of a home in Malibu. Was this the final straw for the notoriously racist royal family?
My son, different religion, different nationality, will be the future stepfather of the future king. You think this bloody racist family, right, will accept that?
Despite everything the Windsors had done to publicly discredit her, Diana was only growing more admired.
It was that popularity that wasn't generally well liked by the Queen and other members of the royal family.
Was it her unyielding popularity that ultimately sealed her fate?
There was a certain amount of jealousy at the enormous success that Diana had with the public. Spectacular. She was a sort of goddess, really. The epitome of modern world.
With her compassion and loving nature, she demonstrated everything a modern-day princess could be, and in doing so, everything the Windsors were not, exposing them as selfish, distant, and irrelevant. With the flash of a smile, she had taken the public away from them, and the whole world was behind her. She simply had to be stopped. Eliminating Diana allowed the young princes to be brought up in the rigid and callous manner of the Windsors, free from their mother's ameliorating influence. Some, however, claimed the princess was killed because of a disturbing practice she had uncovered within the forbidden halls of Buckingham Palace. Her years inside the Windsors' private world of horrors had given Diana a glimpse into the shadowy Luciferian world we call the Illuminati. Was she preparing to use her international platform to expose the hidden workings of the elite? Diana knew the Windsors had a dark side, but researchers speculate she had become aware of something she could no longer keep silent about. According to the book The Biggest Secret by David Icke, Diana had sought advice from a trusted confidant concerning how best to reveal a secret that would shake the world. When asked if it concerned global drug trafficking, she replied, "Oh no, it's much worse than that."
The Sunday Express went further, however, and talked of a palace secret that could bring down the monarchy. The rape allegations were made to Princess Diana by a valet called George Smith, who said that he was raped by a servant of Prince Charles. However, it is believed that George Smith made other allegations of an even more serious nature, that the Queen intervened to stop those allegations coming out in court.
Could Diana have discovered the extensive child trafficking network among the highest levels of power that is only now beginning to surface through scandals such as Jimmy Savile? Jimmy Savile was a creepy radio DJ and TV presenter who also happened to be best friends with Diana's husband, Prince Charles, even attempting to act as a mediator at one point in their troubled marriage. After his death, it was discovered that he had been England's most prolific sexual predator to date. His number of victims, both children and adult, reached into the thousands. He was into sick Aleister Crowley sex magic, including necrophilia, and grew powerful through his ability to procure children for the British aristocracy. Diana loathed the man.
Jimmy Savile was not just a paedophile. He was a procurer of children for the rich and famous. He was, of course, an inner circle, bosom buddy of the British royal family. And in all these investigations and reports that have come out, there's been no mention of his connection to the royal family.
But Savile wasn't the only child trafficker closely associated with the royals. In 2014, news broke of an entire pedophile ring operating within Buckingham Palace, involving quote-unquote VIPs.
A teenage boy working at Buckingham Palace revealed he was groomed and sexually abused by a VIP paedophile ring there. The lad was also assaulted at the royal family's Scottish retreat Balmoral. In a heartbreaking note, the boy, then just 16, told how he was the victim of exploitation of the highest order. Peter McKelvey, the former child protection officer who first raised the alarm about high-profile individuals engaged in child sex abuse, said that their campaign of abuse may have been going on for as long as 65 years, but there has always been the block and the cover-up and the collusion to prevent an investigation.
There was also the case of the Queen's personal butler, Paul Kidd, who ran a high-level child trafficking ring inside Buckingham Palace and even brought children to meet the Queen Mother.
It was first in 2008 that news about deep roots of paedophilia inside Buckingham Palace emerged. Former Buckingham Palace butler was unmasked as a sexual predator who ran a paedophile ring while serving the royal family.
American billionaire and convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein's former sex slave has named the Queen's son Prince Andrew as one of her abusers.
It's a scandal in any shape. Prince Andrew, a member of the royal family, has been named in US legal documents linking him to an abuse of a minor.
The FBI allegedly has tapes of Epstein and his powerful friends having sex with underage slaves at his infamous Orgy Island. No longer the timid, naive teenager once lured into the Windsor's gilded cage, Diana had caught on to much more than anyone suspected. According to Mohammed Al-Fayed, Diana had recorded evidence of quote-unquote serious sexual offenses taking place within Buckingham Palace.
The evidence was dynamite for the royal family. Diana, Prince of Wales, had kept record of all threats and bullying of Prince Philip. She had also recorded evidence of serious sexual offenses which took place inside the royal household.
But deeper research reveals a much more sinister motive behind Savile's child abuse ring. Victims have come forward exposing the ritualistic nature of the abuses they endured at the hands of Savile and his rich and powerful friends. Satanism is known to be practiced among the British aristocracy. Could this be some of the earth-shattering information Diana wanted to expose? If so, she had become a dangerous woman indeed. But might even darker forces have played a role in the princess's untimely demise? Some researchers believe that the princess's death was ritual murder of the highest order. Proponents of this theory claim the princess was murdered according to an ancient pagan tradition and point to the alarming amount of occult symbolism surrounding her death. The Point d'Alma tunnel, where the princess died, was a sacred sacrificial ground to the Merovingians, the ancient Illuminati bloodline which founded Paris. During their rituals, the victim was sacrificed inside the underground temple. Diana was, after all, named for the moon goddess of ancient Rome, making the fact that she died inside an ancient sacrificial chamber to the moon goddess strikingly coincidental. The number 13 is known to have a great deal of significance within the realm of the occult, and is often found alongside the elite cabal's handiwork. Was it merely another coincidence, then, that the princess's car struck the 13th column? What were they really doing with her down in that tunnel for so long? We are told she bled to death, which is also in accordance with high satanic sacrifice.
Why was Diana held in that tunnel for so long when she's supposed to have had internal bleeding which needed repairing? Why not get her to hospital immediately? Why was she held in that tunnel for the best part of an hour and a half? Why? Because in the sick ritual, and that's what it was, the ritual of her murder, she had to die in that place of ancient sacrifice to the goddess Diana. And it was when she died that they then moved her out. And of course, goodness knows what have happened to her internal organs, because this is what these sick people use in their rituals.
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts, but I don't see myself being queen of this country. I don't think many people would want me to be queen. Actually, when I say many people, I mean the establishment that I'm married into, because they've decided that I'm a non-starter.
Now, with Diana out of the way, the Windsor crime syndicate continues unabated. Charles was finally free to marry Camilla, and the family's secrets are safe. No longer is their relevance and public image being threatened by Diana's genuine display of compassion and kindness.
She had the ability to communicate so well with the people she met.
She exploded the do not touch myths when she went to the Middlesex hospital. And the first thing she did was shake hands with an AIDS patient.
To sit on the edge of their bed or the chair and say to them, "Mum, what's going on and how are you now?" and really mean it.
She proved to the world that a princess could be more than fairy tale weddings and diamond tiaras, and displayed a kind of strength of spirit the rest of the royals could only envy. Diana was simply too good for them, and the whole world knew it. And so, she had to be done away with.